professor in Paris 8 in France. And it is a pleasure for us to have you with us here at Red Latinoamérica, la Red de Estudios Críticos Latinoamericanos. As always, we choose like very special guests for our interviews, so we are so happy to have you today here in Chicago with us. Yala, thank you so much for accepting to be interviewed by us.
Thank you very much.
So as I was telling you right before we started actually recording, what we do usually is we want to know also what are people's trajectories? How did they get into philosophy? Especially when it comes to women in philosophy and women of color in philosophy. Since in Colombia too, for us, is very important to change the landscape of the discipline in this regard and in Latin America in general. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get into philosophy? What did that mean for you? What decisions were mediating this life that now you have as an academic in France?
Yeah, there were two moments, I think, when I chose philosophy, and they are quite romantic, because I remember I was 13 years old, and at school I had a great professor of history that was teaching the French Revolution. I mean, the Bastille and 1789, sorry. And she was telling us, it was quite simple, but we were young, that this was the revolution of the philosopher. And she stopped the lesson and she looked at us, we were all 13 years old, and asked us this question: is the man good or not? And I remember the effect of this question on me, and I said, this is the first time I hear such a clever question. And I understood that it was philosophy. So I was quite curious about what was philosophy, and because of this moment that was quite important. And after, in the high school, I was about 17 years old, because we have the philosophy class in France. I discovered the philosophy of Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir, and I really loved, what they were doing, their philosophy, the conceptual contents of their work, but also the fact that they were public intellectuals, and that they were committed, that they were politically committed. And this is what I love, because I had the impression that, for me, the philosophy discourse was not abstract at all, but it was the discourse of emancipation, and it was linked to an emancipatory process. That was, I took it very seriously. It's quite romantic, but this is how philosophy entered in my life.
Yeah, because it starts with the French Revolution question.
Exactly.
And it goes to academics like in France are very much engaged and involved in everyday life and intervening, and so that's very different from the beginning for other people, which is very interesting. So how do you end up from there into working on someone like Bergson? What happened between those two decisions?
Yeah, so I love ideas, you still have this love for concepts, for books, but at the same time I was a musician, and I was doing lyrical singing, you say that? So when I discovered Bergson, it was very important, because I had the impression that he was doing a kind of a philosophy of music, and it was linked to a thing I wanted to do at that time, to be a lyrical singer.
Yeah.
I couldn't be a lyrical singer for many reasons, but I still worked on Bergson, and this is how I came to Bergson, through music, through a practice of music. And what was funny is that from this reflection on the aesthetic of Bergson, I discovered also his understanding of policy or of political issues, and the way he was talking about universalism. This is how my work on Bergson did continue. And at the same time, in France, the many books of postcolonial studies coming from the US were translated. It was in 2005, in that time. And I remember that when I discovered those translations of the postcolonial writers, Spivak, Omnibaba, and Edward Said, I said, my God, I'm losing my time. All they are thinking about is something that I've always felt inside of me, and I always had the impression that these were not serious questions, but I was just a little narcissistic black girl having this kind, having those little not interesting questions about colonial things, but these were serious questions. So I had this moment of schizophrenia in my intellectual journey, continuing and working on an author in a very abstract ways, and feeling that what I always wanted to do was
really the other thing.
Yeah, it was on the other side. And it's how, you know, in when you have a kind of intellectual journey, that the people you encounter and you meet are very interesting. And I met a very important intellectual philosopher whose name is Souleymane Bachir Diagne. He's a Senegalese philosopher, but he also works in the American academia. And he was working on some post-colonial thinkers or some movements from anti-colonial movements from Asia or Africa, and he was showing how they were linked to the Bergsonian philosophy. So thanks to this work, I could reconnect everything in a way.
Okay, everything came together.
Yeah, it was very intuitive, but it was kind of by chance. I had this opportunity to see that I thought that I was a kind of schizophrenic person, but it was possible to reassemble, to remember all that.
To realize that all of it could be put together for you in your trajectory, using what you have done so far and going from there into the direction of postcoloniality.
Into the direction of postcoloniality and also into the direction of the academy.
Yes.
Because you were talking about my position as the black woman in the academy.
Yes.
And first, when you see the philosophical library, I mean, the first philosophical library you have is a white male philosophical library.
Europeans mostly.
Yeah, exactly. And many women from all around the world have thought, of course, but you don't know them at the beginning. So it was quite a strange situation, and I had the impression that to be who I wanted to be, I could not have a chance to be in the academy. That the academy was made for a certain kind of people, a certain kind of philosophy, and that if I wanted to do something else, I had to be in counter institutions, in alternative institutions. So this intellectual schizophrenia was also an institutional schizophrenia. And at the end, by chance, it happened that everything could reconnect, but it was chance, I think, really.
It all clicked in a way.
Yeah,
and this happened when you were already, like, when you decided then to go into your PhD, you were already doing your PhD and you decided to stay there and went and become a professor. When did this really happen exactly?
It's complicated. So I did my PhD on Bergson. I love Bergson and I will always love this philosopher, so I didn't lose my time.
Yes, no.
And at the end of my PhD, when I had this opportunity to be a postdoctoral researcher in Switzerland, I just made a proposition for my postdoctoral research that was linked to French philosophy, from French 20th philosophy. But when I arrived there, it was for the first time I had the opportunity to just work and to do the things I wanted. And I said,
oh, nice. You had the time, you could sit down, you could read the books that you wanted to read,
and
hear the voices that you wanted to hear.
Exactly, so I decided that I stop. I want to do, and I want to explore the post-colonial things. We didn't talk about the decolonial at that time yet.
Yes.
And I said, I want to explore, and no matter what, if I can't be professor with that, I'm fed up, I'm tired of just
performing some
being
kind of
silence,
thinking. Yeah.
And I want to try. This is what I want to do. I'm quite idealistic, perhaps. I don't fit, perhaps, for this society. Okay, that's too romantic. I'm sorry, but I wanted to do something that is worth for me, and I put it first. And after, the question of the academy, of having a position, came in second.
Okay. So first priority to find your own voice.
Exactly.
And whether that had a fit or not in the academic world, that was a secondary thing.
Exactly.
And how do you think that actually happened? How did you make yourself fit? Because sometimes it's a question of you yourself inserting rather than waiting for the space to be created for you, right?
The thing is that I don't know. Okay, I found people who supported me, and I found many people, I think. And perhaps, as I told you, I can be very idealistic sometimes. And I think at that time, and I still have this kind of opinions, I think, I believe in the concept of university in a way. So as I was, perhaps many people share this belief,
Yeah.
So
Some kind of optimism, hope, maybe.
Yeah, and one advice I would give to the people who are torn by their choices is that one thing you must know, and that is very difficult, is how to deal with your resentment, with your bitterness, and with your anger.
Yeah.
And it's true that you will never have a place in the academia. That's the problem if you show your anger and your resentment. So you have to know how to convert your bad feelings, but how to be able to think that even if you are failing, this is not a real failure. Even if you don't manage to enter in the academy, it's not a big failure of your life. And if you have this kind of spirit, it can work. These are bad advices because in a way it doesn't take in account the fact that there are some systemic racism in the academy.
Yes. And real failures. Yeah. And
I'm not the kind of person who say, if you want it, you're gonna get it. This is not my way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But the difficulty of some people who have chosen in their work to work on a postcolonial theory, decolonial theory, is that as they are not accepted by the academy, they become really bitter. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to know how to do with this kind of feelings. And this is something I really understand. This kind of suffering, I do truly understand it, because I had moments of despair also.
Yeah, because you've been there, you know how that feels. Yeah. But you have been able to turn that into a kind of a strength, into a kind of potentiality for something different and for creativity, which is what I hear in your work. There is so much creativity in the way you approach questions. So for instance, in this work you were presenting here in the conference we're at, the question of racial hope, I heard so much creativity in the way you are approaching the question. Can you tell us a little bit about this and about this project that you have? Is this kind of a part of your new project, this question of racial hope?
Yeah, and it's a way, what I love, I think it's not because I'm French, and I know that we all say that for the French people racism does not exist, but racism does exist.
Yeah.
So, and I have a problem with the concept of race, the way we use it. Of course, not race as a biological reality, but race as a social construct.
Yeah.
And what is very difficult to me when I think about the question of blackness, for example, is that I want to escape from race, but I can't. Yeah. And I am always, I settle in a kind of contradiction that has no resolution. Mm-hmm. And when you think about the black condition and perhaps about the racial condition in general, you are trapped in many contradictions. And I want to settle in these kind of contradictions and to see how we can promote a kind of emancipatory process by settling in those contradictions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Hegelian.
Solve them, but
I'm not Hegelian at all.
Yeah.
I'm not Hegelian at all. Really.
Or you could be more Hegelian than you think.
Or
that's the thing about
Hegel.
Hegel.
That's always the thing about Hegel. You never escape from Hegel.
Exactly, so it could be. But tearing with those contradictions rather than trying to resolve them, mm-hmm. and seeing how those contradictions can be productive for you.
Yeah, in a way. But that's not the third term, that's not the synthesis.
No, of course not. Of course not, but that's not Hegel either.
Yeah.
But I'll convince you some other day about Hegel. So, thinking about how you got into philosophy and thinking about how for you what was so attractive about it was also to the possibility of being a public intellectual, which for me sounds you said romantic, but I said so urgent. How do you see yourself in terms of being a public intellectual in France today?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I know that I made some public interventions, but I would consider myself as a public intellectual. I mean, I don't fear the fight. I don't fear the political fight. And now, as we have to face a fascist threat in my country, we are doing this interview today, and there are a lot of riots in Paris, in France, and you cannot stay silent, mm-hmm. not even as an intellectual.
Yeah.
But if you care about freedom, even now I am in this strange position of just defending very liberal principles. This is not my political tradition, so that's really strange, you know. But we are facing a fascist threat. So, but after I'm not the head of any movement. When I wouldn't consider myself as an activist. I have a lot of respect for activist people, but I'm not afraid to be committed. But I want to do it with in a very clever way. Mm-hmm. And the aim of the political commitment is that you don't have to reproduce in the way you are committed the violence and the oppression that you receive, that the society just gives you. I don't know if I was clear, because I have when I was younger, not even students, I was really politically engaged, really politically committed in very radical groups. I mean, radical. We were okay. We were fighting for the good.
Politically active.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And all my political experiences were awful. Mm-hmm. Awful. That is to say, I was in a very progressive group, but I had to face the problem of racism, the problem of the misogyny. You say that?
Yeah.
Misogyny.
Sexism.
Yeah. Classism. Mm-hmm. I was coming from. My family is not rich. Mm-hmm. I was in a leftist group, and I discovered that as a poor person, they considered me as a problem. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't imagine that. They were trying to. I was there to fight against a certain system, a certain kind of oppression, and those groups were reproducing the kind of oppression I was struggling against. Yeah. So this is this violence also of the activism that was very hard for me to handle. Yeah. So I don't fear the political fight. I know that if I can bring a voice, especially for some problems that are important for me, the situation of the DRC, the fascist threat in France, and all those things, I do it. But I want to do it in a very clever way, and I don't want to reproduce the scheme of oppression in the way I talk, in the way I struggle.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense, and because that's what makes philosophy be philosophy and not just any other kind of activism.
True,
right?
Yeah.
So when you start by saying the question in the classroom about the French Revolution, it was not the question of what do we do, it was the question of how do we evaluate this moment, this historical context. So that's kind of what you're talking about right now. How do we take a distance as intellectuals and can produce an evaluation that, while distant, can also be engaging? Yeah. And I don't know if you're optimistic about this, but it sounds like you're optimistic that that kind of engagement is also politically activism and can also change the conditions in which we're in. Which I think, the nice thing about France is that you have a very nice tradition of public intellectuals being very influential in the public sphere too, which is something that we do have in Latin America too in different contexts, but I don't associate personally philosophy with that kind of task in Latin America the way, for instance, I would very easily associate philosophy with that in France. What does it mean for you to be right now, to occupy the spaces you occupy as a woman in philosophy, working on race, being a woman of color? What kind of difficulties do you confront in sort of like an everyday kind of way? If that's a question that I can ask, if that's something.
Yeah, I think it's an important question because you have to. It's a difficult question. It's a very difficult question because I don't consider myself as a victim. Mm-hmm. And I will never consider myself as a victim. Mm-hmm. I'm so proud for that.
Yeah.
But
and it can be paralyzing sometimes.
It can be, but I have. I think I had a lot of opportunities. There is this sentence of Assata Shakur. She says, okay, I'm going to quote her, but it's not going to be very precise. She says something that a wall is just a wall. You just break it. Okay, it can seem easier to say than to do, of course. Mm-hmm. But no, the thing is that I have the impression that for the people, sometimes I was in situation when I had to legitimate my work. Mm-hmm. And in France we don't have affirmative action, so if you're here, is that you deserve it?
Yeah, by merit, and that's it.
Yeah, and sometimes I had to I had to be in front of people that were saying, oh, if you're in the academia, that's because you're a black person. I was saying, we're in France, we don't have affirmative action, so it's not possible.
It's not a quota that I'm filling in here.
Exactly. And so this is the way people are just do despise you in a very natural way, or do delegitimate your work just because of your skin. These are the kind of things that are really, really embarrassing. Mm-hmm. But I have the chance to be in a university that is quite, where people are, my colleagues are really okay. Mm-hmm. And the best things I live now are the relationships with my students. I have a very, my classrooms are totally mixed racially. I have white, black, coming from all around the world. And it is interesting to talk with them sometimes about those questions. And the thing to me is that what is beautiful, especially when you teach about non-Western people, and especially non-Western people of color, is to see how all your students, they can come from Europe, from Asia, from the Americas, from Africa, are able to identify now themselves to other thinkers. And this is my aim, to see, as I did identify with Sartre at that time, and now I have other thinkers coming from other parts of the world, just allow you to identify yourself to, I don't know, to Cesáire and to other women, and this is what I want. And this is, I think it's a beautiful political project in a way, because it's the way to rethink about what binds us, about the common. So I didn't really answer to your question, because I think to me it's still difficult to answer to that.
Of course.
And
because you do it every day, so like having to think about it, besides having to do it every day, would be sometimes a little bit too much. I mean, that's my feeling too.
Yeah, so. But I really, okay, I'm going to say something very cheesy. I believe in the power of love, and I mean, it helps me, for example, to give, not to be strong, because I don't want to be strong, I don't care about being strong, but just to be able to not lose my generosity. Yeah. Because the students who want to work with me, they will need this generosity, and this is what I want to do, to be not a mentor, but to inspire other students to have the strength to be able to fight and to be warriors. Yeah. This is what I want. Yeah. I didn't have that, I think, when I was a student. Professor spreading love, I would say. And this is what the kind of professor I would love to be for my student, being able to be generous enough so they can nurture themselves and be strong enough to face all they have to, or they will have to face. Yeah, and also love what you do and communicate that love and the strength that comes from that love, which is not necessarily to be strong, but to have a firm ground in which to move, to have your authors that you go to every single time you feel a little bit lost. Which are those authors for you today? Like, which are the authors that you would say, these are my people? Okay. Can I say also, because I know you work, can I say also musicians? Because they are, writers and musicians are to me completely connected. Especially if you came into philosophy through like the training of your voice. I love Fabien Eboussi-Boulaga. He's a Cameroonian thinker who just died, unfortunately, 1 month ago. And he wrote the beautiful book called The Muntu Crisis. And this book just changed my life, I would say, because it was a book about, I wouldn't say the decolonization of philosophy, but what Boulaga was showing, it was a book launched in 1977, but what Boulaga was showing is that how the reason, how the philosophical reason can be seen as a colonial reason. And it's not a metaphor at all. So this book was really important for me to be able to understand how the philosophical canon, how the philosophical library was built, what kind of philosophy I had received since the beginning of my education and things like that. So Boulaga, I would say, Cesáire. Yeah, I think Cesáire is one of my favorite thinkers. He's a thinker of hope, the thinker of the kind of action, of contradictions, and he's a poet, so he's important for me. I have Maya Angelou, because sometimes when I read her, take some quotes and it just helps me to live.
Yeah.
So she's important for me. I would say also I think when I read, there are philosophers, but there are also many poets, because I read a lot of poetry, and they are very important for me. And the women voices, I mean, they are in the Western classical tradition and in the jazz. But the singer Jeanne Lee, she's a beautiful jazz voice, and I think with her, Nina Simone, in the tradition of the lyrical singing, Kathleen Ferrier, and I think with those persons, their work, their engagement is very important for me. So it's not that really conceptual, but I would say that when I write, I need music. John Coltrane, sometimes I listen to Love Supreme to John Coltrane, and it helps me to write or things like that. And the way you write is totally different after. So it's not abstract at all, it's really concrete.
For you, it's bodily, it's that bodily experience of music and writing go together.
Yeah.
It's kind of a same exercise for you.
Yeah, exactly.
You train your voice and you train your thinking to write philosophy.
Yeah, exactly.
Those two things go together.
Mm-hmm.
So today you finished with music. Today you were giving a short paper here and you finished with the voice of a woman, with music. So I wanted to finish today too, talking to you about this question of the voice. So how do you see yourself connected to this question of philosophy and the voice, and how would you say that connects to your question of like to the question of decolonial philosophy? How do you see those three things connected?
I think I didn't think about it because I think it's hard. And I know that in my book, the book I'm writing now, I have this kind of empty space when I want to do something about it, but I really don't know how.
Yeah.
It's just an intuition, but I don't know how. The only thing I want to do is to give a space to this kind of experience, because I know it's important for me, but I don't know why it is important. So for the moment, it's very intuitive. And the thing to link it to the question of the decoloniality is that it's just a way for me to have a big libraries with a lot of women voices, with a lot of women of colors voices, and this is what I want. I use today the word of Patrick Chamoiseau, Sentimentec, the library of feelings, and my library of feelings is full of sounds, is full of discs, is full of melodies, and if I write a book, it must be in a way, it won't be a book with the authors I hate, so they are in the trash now, but this will be a book with the people I love and who are stimulating, and those people I love, those thinkers are also people who think with a voice, so
and who are able to listen to each other's voices, I suppose, which is important too.
Exactly.
Well, Yala, thank you so much for this time. It was so wonderful to be able to get to know a little bit of you.
Thank you very much.
I hope everyone else gets to know more of you. And like, you'll be coming to Colombia. Right now you have projects to come to Colombia often, so we'll have more of you there, which will be great.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you and to answer to those beautiful questions.
Thank you.